Do you ever feel a little bit sick, decide to Google your symptoms, and suddenly the internet makes it sound like you might be dying soon? Well, you're not alone. A study found that more than 50% of Gen Z users are turning to TikTok for health advice. Fortunately, not everything online is misleading, and there are dedicated professionals like Dr. Mary Pardee who make it their mission to help patients feel seen and heard by their doctors. Dr. Mary Pardee is a naturopathic medical doctor and certified functional medicine doctor, specializing in preventative medicine and longevity. Growing up, she struggled with stomach issues almost daily, but her doctors only had one answer: medication, which helped but never solved the core issue. She was told that she'd have to live with her pain for the rest of her life. But instead of accepting this fate, she decided that she'd become the doctor she never had. Today, she is finally healthy and free from the chronic pains she once endured. Join us as we interview Dr. Mary Pardee and discover her journey and learn how she's revolutionizing patient care with her online business.
Now on social media, you even have people that are saying like plants can kill you and we shouldn't be eating vegetables. And so there's anything that you can imagine people are saying on social media. And so we have to have a level of discernment as to who we're taking health advice from and be really cautious of that, because I think that there is a lot of non-evidence-based things that are being passed around social media that can not only not be helpful, but potentially harmful for our health.
Welcome to The Creator's Adventure, where we interview creators from around the world, hearing their stories about growing a business. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, we're here today with Dr. Mary Pardee. Mary, welcome to the show.
Hi Brian, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to talking with you. My first question is, what would you say is the biggest thing that you did or you are doing that has helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
Ooh, okay. What's the biggest thing that I did or am doing? Okay, this is actually semi-easy, is just to get out there. I think that was the biggest thing that I've done that has helped me. And what I mean by that is meet people in real life and start conversations. And I don't like calling it networking because I can feel like you're having like a motive of what you're trying to get out of it, but really just to be present in life and see all the connections that you can make. Some of the biggest connections I've ever made have been made in the hallway of a conference just by a guy, wandering around, or, getting a coffee and chatting with somebody and figuring out what they do and collaborating. But I think sometimes as solopreneurs, we can be so like heads down in the work of like getting stuff done that we don't realize that people are all around us. And I currently have a community of entrepreneurs in my closest friend group, and we're all creators and we all collaborate together. And that for me is like dream life, where like I can do a project with my best friend and then, we can be hanging out and spitting back and forth ideas because we met each other, because we had these conversations to begin with. And we had so much in common of just growing a business and the creativity that comes along with that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great thing to pick, and different from what I've heard others pick, but I think it's really important. So I think that is good because yeah, people think of it as it has to be networking, and then they kind of keep their head down, like you're saying. But I think it is really nice to take a step back and realize like these important connections that you have in your life, like how did they actually happen, and what can you do to like facilitate having more of those happen?
Yeah, and it's just being a human and having human conversations and being interested in other people. And being in environments where you're going to be interested in other people, right? Like I'm not really putting myself in a bar where I'm meeting people who are drinking, because that's not like my environment ideally. And so I'm meeting people in rock climbing gyms, or I'm meeting people at Air One, or I'm meeting people, just like doing things that I love to do, because that's where you're going to find the people that you're most aligned with.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, for me, the podcast is one of these things.
Yeah.
I get to talk with interesting people every week. So on your website, you mentioned that you studied medicine to become the doctor that you never had. Can you share like a specific moment or experience from your personal life that was pivotal in kind of deciding to pursue this career in functional medicine?
Yeah, and I think that's a commonality between entrepreneurs too, right? We usually come to the place that we are because of our personal journey, whatever it is. And mine was a very physical personal journey with some health issues when I was younger. And so I had gut issues growing up. I was constipated, I was bloated, I had reflux, I just didn't feel well from a GI perspective. And I went to see conventional gastroenterologist, primary care, did the whole workup, did the colonoscopy, had a bunch of blood work, did all the, breath tests and things that go along with that. And I tried a bunch of treatments that they offered. So I tried medications and after like I went through the conventional system and I didn't get relief, I went to acupuncturists, I went to chiropractors, I went to naturopathic doctors, I went to functional medicine doctors. Da, 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 you get the picture. Like I just tried everything because I really wanted to feel better. And eventually I found myself in the gastroenterologist's office in my probably mid early 20s. And he looked at me and he's like, I reviewed your chart. Nothing is really wrong with you. Like you're not going to die from this. There's nothing that's harming you. And I don't have any more treatment options. You've tried everything. You're just going to have to live with it. Like, I got nothing, like bye-bye kind of thing. And I walked out of that. It was like very clear moment in my life where I walked out of that office and I was in tears as what I, felt like as like a grown woman, like in tears leaving a doctor's office. And it was just a feeling of hopelessness. And at that point, I was like, I don't want people to feel like this. Like, I really want to become a doctor that doesn't make people feel like this. Like, that's my one goal, is to not have people leave my office feeling like I'm feeling right now. And that's what I've shaped my career around, is how to help people with chronic GI issues, but with other things too. And just like how to instill hope in people and how to get good results too. And I think we have to start to get creative. And I think sometimes, your patient, quote unquote, doesn't fit the algorithm. And just because they don't doesn't mean you tell them, I don't know what to do. I wasn't trained in this kind of thing. And entrepreneurs are really good at getting creative. And I think that we need a little bit more of that in medicine, and just the drive to really help somebody to get the results that they want.
Not accepting that it's not resolved yet.
Yeah, I think, and I know what he meant with, I tried all of the conventional things, but there was a bunch of things that I didn't try that was in the research that has evidence behind it. And so that's really what I aim to do with my patients, is to dig a little bit deeper and have other options for them.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I mean, my background is like software development, and so I know friends and family who have struggled with health issues that it's a similar story. It like doesn't fit the doctor's algorithm of what they would expect to be the problem, and so it's kind of like, okay, well, not quite sure. You're not going to die, but I don't know how to help you. And like in software development, like you can't say like, well, there is this bug. It's causing like severe distress for our user, but no, we'll just leave it. We're not going to look into it any further than that.
Right.
And so like to me, that feels like crazy. But yeah, I also want to touch on like what you actually do and how, like, I guess traditional doctors, it's more about, okay, well, we're just going to give you some medication and then that's going to cover it up, rather than fixing what's actually causing it in the first place. So can you talk more about like the differences between preventative medicine and traditional medicine?
Yeah. There's a few key differences, and there's a lot of, quote unquote conventional doctors doing preventative care now too, which is really exciting. And one of the big differences is the amount of time that we're able to spend with people. So I spend between 30 minutes to an hour at every visit with somebody, and that allows me the opportunity to learn about their past medical history, their family history. What are they actually eating? What's their exercise look like? What are they doing for mindfulness? What does their mental health look like? And this is how I treat people, is from a very holistic lens of, I'm not going to just treat the one thing, especially if I think other things are contributing to it. So it's to zoom out and really get the whole picture of somebody's health, and then not to be reactive in medicine and as much as we possibly can to be preventative. And what I mean by that is it's around, a big chunk of men, let's just say, will have, I think it's 50% will have a heart attack before the age of 65. And I bring this stat up because heart disease starts to form in our very early years, but we don't see symptoms of it until much later. And so to wait until somebody has chest pain or to wait until somebody has a positive coronary artery calcium score where we're seeing plaque formation in the arteries to actually treat somebody is craziness, right? Like we should treat it way before we get to that place so that we don't ever get to that place. And that's really what we're focused around is how do we prevent chronic disease from ever happening so that we have many more years of high quality life and potentially just many more years of life in general. My focus is really around quality of life. And so I'm not in the camp of like, everyone's going to live to 180. I'm more in the camp of like something reasonable in terms of extending lifespan, but really good quality of life years while we're here. And so this can include just additional lab work where we're digging a little bit deeper and seeing what are some of these risks for cardiovascular disease or for diabetes or for osteoporosis, and how can we start to mitigate those risks now as early as possible, because we know that when you start to develop chronic disease, that's really what's starting to impede quality of life in our later years into our 70s, 80s. But you got to think about it now. So I love when I can start working with somebody in their 20s or their 30s, because we can do so much to reduce the risk for disease.
Yeah. So for all of our audience who's primarily entrepreneurs, I want to talk about how you transition your medical practice to be online, because I feel like most people hearing, okay, like you're a doctor, so then you work in an office, right? What are you gonna do online? But yeah, like I'm curious about how does that work, and how did you find a way for yourself to be able to serve people online?
Yeah, I actually started online. I was one of the few doctors that like started online and then almost went backwards, where now I see people in person sometimes as well. And COVID was like a big initiator of that. I really think people like wanted in-person one-on-one time with somebody after COVID because of how
Mm,
isolated we all were. Um,
yeah.
but I love the flexibility of being online so that I can go spend a month somewhere else and not be in LA proper. And for me, it was just that. It's like, what do I want to design my life to be like? And how do I do that? And so for me, travel is so important. And so to have the flexibility of being online and to be able to, spend a week somewhere else and still see my patients and work was really important for me. So it was a lifestyle decision for me. And I really, really love it. And I love seeing my patients in person too. So I still do both of those.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's so important to build your business around your ideal life and make it the way that you want. So then you can really like continue to focus on it and build what you want and chase after freedom maybe rather than money.
Mm-hmm.
So still, like I have questions in my head because I'm not involved in medical stuff, but I would imagine like there's some hurdles that you'd have to overcome in doing things online, either like if there's certain regulations or even just customers not like patients not assuming that they could even be able to see you online in certain ways. So were there any? Am I correct, or were those maybe
Yeah.
not as difficult as you thought, or how did that look?
No, there's definitely hurdles with telemedicine, especially if you're prescribing medications that are a different schedule. So we have controlled medications by the DEA, like testosterone, for instance, is one of them. Ketamine. We have a bunch of controlled substances. And with those controlled substances pre-COVID, you had to establish care in person with a patient to actually prescribe that. And that's still the case. COVID during those years of COVID, they put a kind of part-time or short-term waiver in place to say, okay, you can prescribe these things without seeing the person in person. And we're just now getting back into that is going to be a requirement again for people. And so there's definitely limitations. And that's why I still have an office in LA that people can come to do the in-person work. And you also need to do physical exams on some people. So we have a group of people, and a lot of them still have a primary care doctor, still seeing an OBGYN. They're doing their yearly physical exams with those other practitioners. And so in that case, we may not need to do a physical. And then there's some people that we really want to do a specific part of the physical in person ourselves, or we need to establish care for a controlled substance to be prescribed. So there's definitely barriers. It's not like it's the easiest thing to do, but we have a system that really works for patients and for us. And people right now love telemedicine. They love to be able to be on a work call, and then 11:30 comes around, they jump on our Zoom, they see us, and then they jump back off and they're back at their house to their next work call. And so that's just like the reality of where we're at in the world right now, is the ease in communication.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So we saw that you're pretty active on social media, and we saw one of your Instagram reels where you mentioned that 1 out of 5 people go to TikTok for medical advice because they don't either feel seen or comfortable with their own doctors. So can you discuss like pros and cons of medical advice on social media and like risks involved, and maybe how you believe medical professionals can kind of like bridge the gap? Because I'm sure there's so much useful information on social media, but I feel like I've definitely seen stuff where it's also like, I'm not sure this person's really like qualified or like what they're saying is true.
Yeah, yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head for the first part, where you don't know who's talking to you on social media a lot of the times. And I think that's a really important piece. And it doesn't mean that you have to be this medical professional to be able to speak on this thing, right? Like, I really believe that a lot of different people can add value to the space. You know, if you've experienced a condition yourself, to speak about your experience, right?
Mm.
And I think if somebody isn't a practicing practitioner and hasn't treated many people with that one thing, then we can sometimes lose sight of what is being told to us. And I'll just give a more concrete example. Or if somebody has, let's say, irritable bowel syndrome, and they say, you know, I took this probiotic and it healed me. Somebody else with IBS may think that one's going to heal me then because I have IBS too. And
Mm.
unless you've treated hundreds or thousands of people with IBS, you wouldn't know that one thing one thing doesn't solve everybody with IBS's issues. And you have to treat each person that comes in. And just because it helps one person doesn't mean it's going to help somebody else. Now on social media, you even have people that are saying like plants can kill you and we shouldn't be eating vegetables. And so there's anything that you can imagine people are saying on social media. And so we have to have a level of discernment as to who we're taking health advice from, and be really cautious of that, because I think that there is a lot of non-evidence-based things that are being passed around social media that can not only not be helpful, but potentially harmful for our health as well. And then on the flip side, I think that there can be a lot of utility about spreading like evidence-based health information and allowing people access to things that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise. For instance, you know, for me, like I give out a ton of free health information online, and there's no possible way that I could see each of those people individually. And so I think we have the spectrum on social media, and we just have to go in with a level of discernment as the person who's listening.
Yeah. So you also sell online courses on supplements and gut health. And I'm curious, like, what role do these courses play for your practice? Like, what's, I guess, the primary business model? Is it like the telemedicine and like talking with clients, or is it the courses? Like, do the courses funnel people into it? How does it all work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I built those courses with a third-party company called Commune, and they're friends of mine. And it's one of those things, right? Like, just pick your head up and you'll meet amazing people. And I enjoy collaborating with my friends. And right now, the main kind of way that they aid in our business is they provide leads to our business for potential patients. And so people will often go onto the commune platform, they'll see my course, they'll really resonate with the message that I have, and then they'll want to become a patient of our practice. It's also another way to give out health information at a much lower price point than working with me directly. And so my goal is to spread as much positive health information that helps people live longer, healthier lives as I can on the planet, just my personal mission statement. And so I'm not going to do that by one-on-one care. I'm going to have a bunch of different avenues to do that. And so courses are another way to scale that and reach more people. And I really, really enjoy them. And I'll be doing online content creation like that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. I think there's a lot of different niches and industries where people think, well, I have to like interact with the person. I can't have a course. But there's often all of these things that you end up going through with a client or a patient that is kind of repetitive to get them to a certain point of where you can now really help them individually. And I think courses are so powerful to scale that to everyone. So then once they come to talk to you, they can say, yeah, I went through the course. So like, this is where I'm at now. And they already have this baseline of understanding that is so much further.
Yeah, exactly. And you hit it on the head where the supplements course that I created was me putting into words what I tell all of my private clients. So it's like everyone asks me, should I take a magnesium supplement? Should I take a fish oil? Should I do this? Should I do that? Or like, how do I pick out a good supplement? And so all of those questions I get on a daily basis, I made into a course to say, okay, if you have this question and a million other of my patients have this question, I'm guessing a lot of people do. And so it's a really easy way to package information that doesn't have to be individualized to people and to give it to the masses. And my supplements course is one of my favorite pieces that I've made just because I think it's going to help people save so much money on not buying shitty, useless supplements, which is another mission of mine because I've bought all of them myself.
So yeah, I'm curious from the perspective of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are usually, or at least tend to be so focused that they're like all in on their business and their health tends to suffer. So what suggestions do you have for entrepreneurs out there to better take care of their health?
Yeah, so with my private concierge patients, a good chunk of them are entrepreneurs, high-level CEOs, people that are really high achievers. And they work with me because they don't have the time to do the research on their own to figure out, okay, what should I be eating? What should I be doing for exercise? Am I going to live forever? Am I going to die tomorrow? Kind of thing. Like, give me the lowdown. Just tell me what to do. And through working with all these people, I really realized that we can really suffer health-wise when all we focus on is work. And it's so common for especially startups, early stage companies, but you name it. You know, I have a bunch of people in the entertainment industry and people are burnt out. And a lot of the times they're choosing to get that last thing done for work instead of their health. And so having somebody on your team that acts as a health coach or a concierge doctor or just a general care doctor to make sure that you're staying up to date with your screening exams, getting really in-depth blood work, it's not only going to make sure that you live longer, but it's also very likely going to improve your energy and your ability to work better right now. And so that's like the surprise that a lot of my clients get is, wow, like I thought that this was gonna like take away from the time I have to work. And what I'm realizing is I have more energy to work. I feel more rested. I've never felt stronger. I've lost, body fat and I just feel better in my body. I feel more confident to go out to these networking events. And so don't let go of your health if you're an entrepreneur. I see the people that do that and each and every one of them come to me and say, I wish I had done this sooner. I wish I had prioritized my health, because if you don't have health, you really don't have anything. And we don't want you to get to that point. We want you to think about it now and be preventative.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. I always like joke with my wife, like the phrase "health is wealth." Like whenever I'm gonna like I want to spend money on something that like the food is more expensive or whatever it is, something related to health that like it's probably worth it. Maybe not in the case of certain supplements, as you were saying, but it's probably worth it versus like the long-term effects of like not being healthy and then the quality of life suffering, all the money you have to spend on medical care and things like that. But I'm
Can I
curious,
ask you
is
a
there like,
question?
yeah, sure.
How do you balance the two, entrepreneurship and your health?
So I try to eat healthy and I try to make sure that I give myself time to exercise 2 to 3 times a week at least. And I like specifically like schedule like when that's gonna happen. And I do find that I feel so much better from doing that
Yeah.
versus when I don't. And I pretty much have always been relatively good at being balanced with that, except like a couple years ago, our daughter was born, and like some kind of time had I had to figure out how to make some kind of time and space for that, and so it seemed like health was the thing that started to get neglected a little bit there, and getting back on track of that and exercising more often really made a difference for me. But I'm curious, actually, could you point to like, is there one thing that's the most common that entrepreneurs or people in general come to you as like what they seem to be leaving out? Is it like exercise, sleep, like mental, food? I don't know.
Yeah, sleep is a big one, but it really depends on the person. So I have some people that like no matter what, they're getting good sleep, but they can't figure out how to fit exercise in, or they just don't know what to do for exercise. A really common thing that I see is, some days I do yoga, then I do Pilates, then I do this HIIT class, then I go to Orange Theory, then I lift weights one day. Sometimes they go for a walk and they just don't really have a plan around what their exercise should be, or they don't have a goal either. And so a lot of it is becoming much more objective about exercise and writing prescriptions and having dose dependent, outcomes that you're looking for. And the other thing that I see with entrepreneurs is they're very likely to get a business coach or have advisors for their business or have business mentors. And I ask them, I'm like, great, who's your health coach? Who's your health mentor? Like, what are you doing for that bucket of your life? And a lot of the times they're like, I went to my primary care 2 years ago and they said everything was fine. And you would never say that about like, oh, I had a business coach 2 years ago and I haven't really talked about anybody about business since then, right? Like that idea is crazy, but we do it with our health. And so part of it is just inspiring people to like, don't forget about this bucket. Even though your business is growing, you want to be able to enjoy the fruits of that business for the rest of your life. Like that's the most important thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, what advice would you give to somebody who they want to start some kind of business that is maybe not as typically seen to be online, like medical advice, and they're trying to figure out how to expand into the online world, but like they're worried about, I guess, either regulation or all the hurdles of just it not being the common choice. What would you tell somebody like that?
Yeah, well, what I would say is that if it's not a common thing, like you might have something really good going for you. Like it's a way to differentiate yourselves from other companies because people are looking for things that are different, especially if the thing that isn't different isn't really working for people that well. And I think entrepreneurship is all about creativity. And so if you can imagine it, you can likely build it. And all of the hurdles are that they're hurdles. There's this saying that with the greatest challenges comes the greatest opportunity. And I think that there's pieces of that are very much true. And I will 100% say I do not have it all figured out. So if you look at me as like, okay, somebody who's figured out in health, I'm still like changing things, changing our model, changing our structure, looking at, other things that I want to do in the field. But I think what you brought up in the beginning was really important as to like envision what your life ideally looks like, envision what your health ideally looks like, envision all of it, and what are like the first steps to go and to do that with. And just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean that it's not possible. It doesn't mean that it's not a great idea. So yeah, that's what's exciting about entrepreneurship for me is all these creative minds making things that change our lives.
Yeah, and I think you just mentioned a great point that both new and experienced entrepreneurs sometimes I feel forget is that you can change things. So I think there's people starting out that they're like, oh, if I choose this, I'm stuck with it. But, like, you can adapt and adjust later on. And I think there's also people that like they've just been doing it for so long, they forget that like there could be other ways. They could stop doing certain things. They could change things to not only make their lives better, but potentially make the lives better of their customers as well.
I think some of the most successful companies started as something very, very different, right? And so we have to be able to pivot to not be super tied to something. I know that's what I'm struggling with right now is my brain can get fixated on something and like want it to be the same. And so to say, okay, we have to release parts of that because it's not serving the greater good, and what is this new thing that we don't even know about that could potentially be something that helps more people and is easier and more fun and, you know, gets to the general mission without some of the hassle.
Yeah. So one of the things I like to do in the show is have every guest ask a question to our audience. So if you could ask our audience anything, whether something you're curious about or just kind of want to get people thinking about, what would that be?
I think it's right in line with what we're talking about with as an entrepreneur. If you can ask yourself, are you prioritizing your health as much as you're prioritizing your business growth? And if the answer to that is no, is that really how you want to be living your life? Or is there something else that you could be doing to make sure you can live a really healthy, abundant, long life?
Awesome. All right. Well, Mary, before we get going, where else can people find you online?
Yes, my website is modernmed.com. It's modrnmed.com. My Instagram, where I give out a ton of free health information, is at dr.mary Pardee, Pardee. And then we also have at modernmed, modrnmed, for both Instagram accounts. We started a podcast called Modern Wellness, where I interview people in the health industry about the latest and greatest in preventative medicine, gut health, and longevity. And if you are interested in working one-on-one with a doctor, you can actually go to modernmed.com and schedule a complimentary, totally free consults with one of the doctors in my practice. And if you want to work in depth in a concierge model, email us, reach out, and I'm still accepting a few referrals for concierge patients as well.
All right, awesome. Mary, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it.